opening the rising sun at dawn. June 4th, 1942, 0430 hours. 240 nautical miles northwest of Midway Atoll. The Pacific Ocean stretches endlessly in every direction. Black water meets black sky. No moon, no stars, only the phosphorescent wake of warships cutting through the darkness. On the bridge of the aircraft carrier, Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo stands motionless. His white uniform is crisp, spotless. His face shows nothing. Behind him, the carrier's island tower rises like a steel mountain. The ship vibrates. 30,000 tons of steel, moving at 24 knots. Nagumo watches the horizon, waiting. He has done this before. Pearl Harbor, Darwin, Ceylon, everywhere the same result. Victory, absolute, decisive, crushing. In 6 months, his carrier strike force has sunk 5 battleships. 1 carrier, 2 cruisers, 7 destroyers. They have destroyed over 400 enemy aircraft. They have killed thousands. They have conquered an ocean. The Americans call his force Kido Butai, the mobile force. The British call it the most powerful naval aviation striking force in history. Nagumo's pilots call it something else, Muteki, invincible. Behind Akagi, 3 more carriers follow in formation. Kagam, Hiryu, Soryu. Together, they carry 248 aircraft, Zeros, Vals, Kates, the finest carrier aircraft in the world, flown by the finest pilots in the world. Below deck, Lieutenant Commander Mitsuo Fuchida lies in the sickbay, appendicitis. Removed yesterday, he commanded the Pearl Harbor attack. Today, he can barely stand, but he insists on being present, on witnessing, on leading, even from a stretcher. The Americans are broken, he told Nagumo yesterday. Their carriers are in the South Pacific. Midway is defended by obsolete aircraft and inexperienced pilots. We will destroy them before breakfast. Nagumo said nothing. He never does. But he agreed. On the flight deck of Akagi, 180 feet above the water, ordnance crews work in darkness, loading bombs, fueling aircraft. Type 99 Val-dive bombers sit in neat rows. Beneath each fuselage, an 800-kilogram armor-piercing bomb, designed to penetrate concrete, to shatter bunkers, to obliterate land installations. The mission is simple, obvious, textbook. Bomb Midway Island, destroy the airfield, eliminate the American base, prepare for the invasion fleet following 300 miles behind. No American carriers are expected. According to Japanese intelligence, USS Yorktown is at the bottom of the Coral Sea. USS Enterprise and USS Hornet are near the Solomon Islands, too far away, too late to intervene. This is not a battle, this is an execution. At 0430, the order comes, launch aircraft. The flight deck erupts. Zeros roar to life, one after another. 18 of them. The Nakajima Sekai radial engines scream in the darkness. Blue exhaust flames shoot from their cowlings. The sound is deafening, primal, the sound of controlled violence. Behind the Zeros, 36 Val dive bombers. Behind them, 36 Kate torpedo bombers, armed with bombs today instead of torpedoes. Land attack configuration. At 0435, the first Zero accelerates down Akagi's flight deck. The carrier steams into the wind at 26 knots. The Zero reaches the deck edge, drops, disappears for a moment, then climbs, rising into the darkness. One after another, the aircraft launch. 90 in total from Akagi and Kaga. Another 72 from Hiryu and Soryu. By 0445, all 162 aircraft are airborne. Circling, forming up. The formation takes shape in the pre-dawn sky. Zeros high, Vals and Kates below. Tight, disciplined, perfect. At 0455, they turn southeast, toward Midway, toward what they believe is an undefended island. An easy target. The first objective in a flawless plan. Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga leads the strike. He is 29 years old, veteran of Pearl Harbor. China, Ceylon, 36 missions, 0 losses. His radio crackles. Maintain formation. Expect no fighter opposition. American radar is primitive. They will not see us coming. Tomonaga clicks his transmitter twice. Acknowledgement. Behind him, 161 aircraft follow in perfect formation. The rising sun insignia on their wings will soon be visible in the dawn light. But for now, they are invisible, silent, deadly. The darkest hour before dawn. In about 20 minutes, everything will change. But Tomonaga doesn't know that. Neither does Nagumo. Neither does anyone aboard Kido Butai. They are about to fight a battle they believe they have already won. They are wrong. Chapter 1. The Doctrine of Decisive Battle. April 1942, 2 months earlier. Imperial Japanese Navy General Staff Headquarters, Tokyo. The room is silent, except for the sound of rain against the windows. Heavy rain. Spring rain. The kind that drowns out everything else. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto sits at the head of the conference table. 57 years old. Gray hair. Missing 2 fingers on his left hand. Lost in the Battle of Tsushima, 1905, when he was a 21-year-old ensign. He was there when Admiral Togo destroyed the Russian Baltic Fleet, the greatest naval victory in Japanese history, perhaps in all history. Yamamoto learned something that day, something the entire Imperial Japanese Navy learned. Decisive battle works. 1 engagement, 1 afternoon, complete annihilation of the enemy fleet. Moreover, for 40 years, the Japanese Navy has built its entire strategy around that single principle, Kantai-Kessen, the decisive battle doctrine. When climactic engagement between battle fleets. Winner takes all. It worked against China in 1894. It worked against Russia in 1905. It will work against America in 1942. It has to. Yamamoto looks around the table. 23 officers. The finest strategic minds in the Imperial Navy. Captains, rear admirals, vice admirals, men who have spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. Pearl Harbor was not decisive, Yamamoto says quietly. His voice is barely above a whisper. Everyone leans forward to hear. We destroyed battleships. We destroyed aircraft. We killed 2,400 Americans, but we did not destroy their carriers. We did not destroy their will to fight. We did not end the war. He pauses, lets the words sink in. The Doolittle raid proved this. 16 American bombers attacked Tokyo. They caused minimal damage, killed 50 civilians, destroyed a few buildings, militarily insignificant. Another pause, but psychologically catastrophic. The Americans bombed our capital, the Emperor's Palace, the sacred homeland. They proved we are vulnerable. They proved we cannot protect our own territory. They must be punished. They must be destroyed, decisively, completely, permanently. Captain Kameto Kuroshima stands. He is Yamamoto's chief strategic planner. Brilliant, eccentric. He sometimes works for 72 hours straight, burning incense and refusing to eat, until he solves a problem. We will lure the American carriers into a trap, Kuroshima says. He walks to the map on the wall. The Pacific Ocean. Vast, empty, infinite. Midway Island, he points. A tiny atoll. 2 square miles of sand and coral. 2,300 miles northwest of Pearl Harbor. The Americans use it as a submarine and patrol aircraft. Base. Strategically important. Psychologically important. They will defend it. He traces a line from Pearl Harbor to Midway. If we attack Midway, the Americans will send their carriers to defend it. They will have no choice. When they arrive, we will destroy them. All of them. In one battle, just as Admiral Togo destroyed the Russians at Tsushima. Rear Admiral Ryunosuke Kusaka stands. He is Nagumo's chief of staff. Cautious, analytical. This assumes the Americans are stupid enough to walk into our trap. What if they refuse? What if they see through our deception? They won't. Kuroshima says. American intelligence is primitive. They rely on propaganda and overconfidence. They still think battleships win wars. They don't understand carrier aviation. They don't understand concentration of force. They will react emotionally, not strategically. Yamamoto nods slowly. We will use a diversionary attack. The Aleutian Islands, Alaska. We will attack Dutch Harbor on June 3rd. 1 day before the Midway attack. American attention will split. They will send forces north. When Midway is attacked, their carriers will arrive piecemeal. Divided, vulnerable. Captain Yasumi Doi, intelligence officer, speaks. Our latest reports confirm USS Yorktown was severely damaged at the Coral Sea. She is either sunk or under repair in Pearl Harbor. She will not participate. That leaves only Enterprise and Hornet. 2 carriers against our 4. Even if they arrive at Midway, we have numerical superiority. And qualitative superiority, adds Commander Minoru Genda, Kido Butai's air operations officer, 37 years old, architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, considered by many the finest aviation tactician in the world. Our pilots are veterans. 6 months of continuous combat operations. Our Zeros are superior to anything the Americans have. Our tactics are proven. We will win. Yamamoto listens to all of this. He knows it's true. every word. The Japanese carrier force is the most powerful in the world. The pilots are superb. The aircraft are excellent. The plan is sound. But something bothers him, something he cannot articulate, cannot prove, a feeling, an intuition developed over 40 years at sea. What if we're wrong? Yamamoto asks quietly. The room goes silent. What if American intelligence is better than we think? What if they know we're coming? What if all three carriers are waiting for us? Kuroshima shakes his head. Impossible, Admiral. We have changed our naval codes. We are maintaining radio silence. We have dispersed our forces to create confusion. The Americans cannot know our plans. Cannot? Yamamoto raises an eyebrow. Or probably do not. No one answers. Yamamoto stands, walks to the window, watches the rain. At Pearl Harbor, we achieved surprise because the Americans were arrogant. They believed we could not cross the Pacific undetected. They believed we would not dare attack them. They were wrong. He turns back to the room. Are we now making the same mistake? Are we assuming American incompetence? American blindness? American cowardice? We are assuming American reality. Genda says firmly. They have lost every battle since the war began. Wake Island, Philippines, Java Sea. Coral Sea was a tactical draw at best. Their pilots are inadequately trained. Their aircraft are inferior. Their doctrine is obsolete. These are facts, not assumptions. Yamamoto nods slowly. Then we proceed. The operation is approved. Kido Butai will attack Midway on June 4th. 4 carriers, 248 aircraft. The invasion fleet will follow. We will occupy the island, extend our defensive perimeter, and force the Americans into our decisive battle. He sits down, but I want contingencies. What if American carriers appear unexpectedly? What if they achieve surprise? With respect, Admiral, Kusaka interrupts. We are preparing for battle, not for disaster. The Americans are broken, defeated, demoralized. In 6 months, we have conquered everything from the Indian Ocean to the Central Pacific. We are invincible. The Americans know this. The whole world knows this. Yamamoto says nothing, but his eyes show something. Doubt? Fear? Premonition? The meeting ends. The officers file out. The rain continues. Tokyo disappears in gray mist. In 6 weeks, Kido Butai will sail for Midway. 4 carriers, 11,000 men, the most powerful naval aviation force ever assembled. They are sailing toward a battle they expect to win easily, a battle that will destroy them completely. But they don't know that yet. They cannot imagine it. They have never lost. They have never even come close to losing. They think they are invincible. They think the Americans are fools. They think this will be another Pearl Harbor. They are about to learn otherwise. Chapter 2. The Illusion of Invincibility. May 1942. 1 month before the battle. Hashirajima Anchorage, Hiroshima Bay. The morning sun glints off the water like scattered diamonds. 4 aircraft carriers sit at anchor, perfectly aligned, 500 meters apart. Akagi, Kagam, Hiryu, Soryu. Around them 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, 12 destroyers. The pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy. On Akagi's hangar deck, Lieutenant Zenji Abe briefs his dive bomber squadron. 21 pilots sit on folding chairs. They are young? Average age, 23. But they are veterans. Every man has at least 15 combat missions. Some have 30, some have 50. Midway will be simple, Abe says. He points to a map pinned to the bulkhead. The island has 2 airfields, Eastern Island and Sand Island, connected by a causeway. Our target is the military installations, fuel dumps, ammunition storage, barracks, hangars. He taps the map. American fighters will be minimal, perhaps 24, Brewster Buffaloes mostly, obsolete aircraft, flown by inexperienced pilots. Our Zeros will sweep them from the sky in minutes. The pilots nod. They have heard this before, at Pearl Harbor, at Darwin, at Colombo. Every time the reality matched the briefing. Easy victories, minimal losses. Lieutenant Takehiko Chihaya raises his hand. What about anti-aircraft fire? Coast defense guns, Abe replies. 5-inch batteries, manually operated, slow traverse, primitive fire control. Avoid them if possible. If not, attack from high altitude and dive at maximum speed. Standard doctrine. He pauses. Any other questions? Silence. Good. Bombing configuration will be 800-kilogram armor piercing. Bombs for the first wave. High explosive fragmentation for the second wave if required. Expect 1 wave to be sufficient. More nods, more confidence, more certainty. This is what 6 months of unbroken victory creates. Not arrogance exactly. Something deeper. A fundamental belief in superiority, in inevitability, in destiny. Across the hangar deck, Lieutenant Hashimoto Toshio watches the briefing. He is a zero pilot, 34 missions, 17 confirmed kills, 2 probable, 0 losses. He has fought Chinese pilots, British pilots, Dutch pilots, American pilots. He has never been defeated, never even been seriously challenged. The Americans cannot fight, Hashimoto tells his wingman, Petty Officer Yoshio Shiga. At Pearl Harbor, we destroyed their aircraft on the ground. At Colombo, they fled before we even attacked. At Darwin, they scattered like frightened children. They have no spirit, no discipline, no courage. Shiga nods. He is 21, 15 missions, 9 kills. He worships Hashimoto like a god. Do you think they will send their carriers to Midway? Shiga asks. I hope so, Hashimoto says. I want to shoot down American carrier aircraft. I want to prove the Zero is superior to everything the Americans have. The Wildcat, the Dauntless, the Devastator, all of them are inferior, obsolete, death traps. He lights a cigarette, exhales slowly. The Americans thought they could win a war against us. They thought their industrial capacity would overcome our spirit. They were wrong. Spirit always defeats materialism. Bushido always defeats capitalism. We will prove this at Midway. In the officer's wardroom, a different conversation unfolds. Commander Minoru Genda sits with Commander Mitsuo Fuchida. They have known each other for 20 years. Naval Academy classmates. Brothers in everything but blood. I have concerns, Genda says quietly. They are alone. The door is closed. The plan is too complex. Too many moving parts. Too many assumptions. Fuchida frowns. We have rehearsed for 6 weeks. Every pilot knows his role. Every ship knows its position. What concerns you? Flexibility, Genda says. The plan assumes everything goes perfectly. The Americans don't detect us. Their carriers don't arrive. The first strike neutralizes Midway completely. But what if something goes wrong? What if the Americans are waiting for us? What if we need to attack their carriers and Midway simultaneously? Then we adapt, Fuchida says. We are professionals. We have trained for every contingency. Have we? Genda leans forward. At Pearl Harbor, we knew exactly where the enemy was. Anchored, stationary, predictable. At Midway, we're attacking a fixed target. But American carriers could be anywhere. If they appear unexpectedly, we will need to rearm our aircraft. Switch from land bombs to armor-piercing bombs. Change from torpedoes to bombs. Back and forth. This takes time. During that time, we are vulnerable. Fuchida shakes his head. You worry too much. American carriers are not at Midway. Our intelligence confirms this. Yorktown is sunk. Enterprise and Hornet are near the Solomons. By the time they reach Midway, we will have already neutralized the island and prepared for their arrival. We will destroy them on our terms, at our timing, with our full strength. And if intelligence is wrong, it's not. How do you know? Fuchida pauses. I don't. But I have faith in our pilots, in our aircraft, in our training. In 6 months, we have fought 30 major engagements. We have won every single one, not just one. Dominated, annihilated. The Americans cannot surprise us. They cannot defeat us. It is impossible. Nothing is impossible, Genda says quietly. Defeat is, Fuchida replies. For Kido Butai, defeat is impossible. This is the mindset of the Japanese carrier force in May 1942. Not mere confidence, not simple pride. Something more dangerous. A collective delusion born from repeated success. The belief that victory is inevitable, that the enemy is inferior, that the gods themselves favor Japan. This belief is reinforced every day, in briefings, in training exercises, in conversations, in official reports. On May 15th, Vice Admiral Nagumo addresses the entire carrier force. 5,000 men assembled on the 4 flight decks. He stands on Akagi's bridge, his voice carried by loudspeakers. You are the finest naval aviators in the world, Nagumo says. His voice is flat, emotionless, but the words carry weight. In 6 months, You have destroyed more enemy ships and aircraft than any naval force in history. You have conquered an ocean. You have never been defeated. You have never even been challenged. He pauses, looks across the assembled sailors and airmen. At Midway, you will face an enemy that is broken, demoralized, defeated. The Americans know they cannot win. They know they are inferior. They know that every battle against us ends the same way. Their destruction, our victory. Another pause. But do not underestimate them. They are desperate. Desperate men fight unpredictably. They take foolish risks. They sacrifice themselves needlessly. Be prepared for this. Expect kamikaze attacks. Expect suicidal bravery. Expect them to die bravely but futilely. Our mission is simple. Destroy Midway Island. Destroy American carriers if they appear. Secure the perimeter. The operation will take 3 days, maybe less. By June 7th, Midway will be ours. The Americans will have no carriers left. The war will effectively be over. He stops, looks at the horizon. The Emperor is watching. The nation is watching. The world is watching. Do not disappoint them. Do your duty. Victory is certain. The assembled men cheer, not a roar. A controlled expression of confidence. Professional. Disciplined. Certain. They believe every word. Why wouldn't they? Everything Nagumo said is objectively true. They are the finest naval aviation force in the world. They have never lost. The Americans are demoralized. Victory has always come easily. What they don't know, what they cannot know, is that at that exact moment, 800 miles to the east, American cryptanalysts are reading their communications. American intelligence knows the attack is coming. American carriers are already moving into position. The Japanese think they are the hunters. They think the Americans are the prey. They think surprise belongs to them. They are wrong about everything. But they won't discover this until June 4th, at 10:20 hours, when the world changes forever. Chapter 3, The Search for Phantoms. June 4th, 1942, at 5:45 hours, 200 miles northwest of Midway. The sun breaks the horizon. Red. Angry. The ocean turns from black to gray to deep blue in minutes. The 4 carriers of Kido Butai cut through calm water at 24 knots. Around them, the escort ships maintain perfect formation, precision, discipline, the Japanese way. On Akagi's bridge, Vice Admiral Nagumo receives the first report. The strike force has reached Midway. Bombs are falling. Radio silence is broken. Lieutenant Tomonaga's voice crackles through the static. Surprise achieved. No fighter opposition. Attacking targets now. Nagumo nods. Exactly as planned. He turns to Rear Admiral Kusaka, his chief of staff. Launch the search planes. This is doctrine. Standard procedure. While the strike force attacks Midway, reconnaissance aircraft search the surrounding ocean for enemy ships. 7 search planes, launched from cruisers and battleships, each assigned a specific sector, each covering a pie-shaped wedge of ocean from 0 to 300 miles. The search planes are supposed to launch at 0430, before the strike force, before the attack. This gives them maximum time to search, maximum coverage, maximum warning if enemy ships appear. But there are delays. Cruiser Tone's catapult malfunctions. One of her float planes doesn't launch until 0500. 30 minutes late. That plane is assigned to search Sector 5. The sector directly toward where the American carriers are actually located. Nagumo doesn't know this. The delay seems minor, irrelevant. What are the chances American carriers are in that exact sector? Intelligence says they're near the Solomon Islands, 2,000 miles away. At 0545, all 7 search planes are finally airborne. They fan out across the Pacific, looking for ghosts, looking for enemies that intelligence says don't exist. On Akagi's flight deck, the second-wave aircraft sit ready. 93 planes, all armed with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs. Anti-shipping configuration. Just in case American ships appear, just in case intelligence is wrong. Lieutenant Takehiko Chihaya stands next to his Valdive bomber. Beneath the fuselage, an 800-kilogram armor-piercing bomb, designed to penetrate warship armor, to destroy carriers, to sink battleships. Do you think we'll see combat today? His observer, Petty Officer Matsuda, asks. Probably not, Chihaya says. The Americans are not here. If they were, the search planes would have found them by now. Matsuda nods. But something bothers him. Why are we armed for anti-shipping if no ships are expected? Paranoia! Caution! Admiral Nagumo fought at Tsushima. Old sailors never completely trust intelligence. They prepare for everything. At 600, radio reports begin coming from Midway. Tomonaga's voice is calm, professional. First attack wave complete. Installations burning. Airfield damaged but not destroyed. Recommend second strike necessary. On Akagi's bridge, this creates immediate tension. Kusaka turns to Nagumo. If Midway requires a second strike, we need to rearm the reserve aircraft. Remove torpedoes. Install land bombs. We can complete rearming in approximately 90 minutes. Nagumo stares at the horizon, calculating, thinking. The decision seems obvious. No American ships have been detected. The search planes have found nothing. Midway needs to be neutralized completely before the invasion fleet arrives. Begin rearming, Nagumo orders. All reserve aircraft. Land bomb configuration. This is the first critical decision, and on the surface it makes perfect sense. No enemy ships. No enemy threat. Neutralize Midway. Textbook. But it's wrong, catastrophically wrong. At that exact moment, 200 miles to the southeast, the American carriers Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown are launching their strike forces. Every available aircraft, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, fighters, 151 aircraft total, all heading directly toward Kido Butai. But Nagumo doesn't know this. The delayed search plane from Tone hasn't reached its furthest search point yet. The American carriers are still invisible, still undiscovered, still phantoms. On Akagi's hangar deck, ordnance crews begin the rearming process. It is difficult, dangerous, time-consuming. Each torpedo weighs 800 kilograms. Each bomb weighs 800 kilograms. They must be carefully removed from aircraft, carefully installed on other aircraft, carefully armed, carefully positioned. The hangar deck becomes chaos. Controlled chaos. Professional chaos. But chaos nonetheless. Torpedoes are detached, rolled on carts, taken to storage. Bombs are brought up from magazines, lifted on hoists, attached to bomb racks. Aviation fuel is pumped into empty tanks. Ammunition is loaded into machine guns. Time passes. 0615, 0630, 0645. At DOS 700, everything changes. A radio message from Cruiser Tone's delayed search plane. Plane number 4, Sector 5. The pilot's voice is sharp, excited. Sighted 10 ships bearing 0 to 10 degrees. Distance 240 miles from Midway. Course 150 degrees. Speed 20 knots. On Akagi's bridge, this message detonates like a bomb. Kusaka grabs the radio. Query ship types immediately. Silence. 30 seconds. 45 seconds. Every second feels like an hour. Finally, the search plane responds. Clarifying ship types now. This is the moment everything begins to unravel. Not because the Americans have been discovered, but because the discovery comes at the worst possible moment. Rearming is half complete. Torpedoes removed. Land bombs not yet installed. Aircraft scattered across the hangar deck in various states of readiness. Nagumo stares at the message. His face shows nothing, but his mind is racing. 10 ships. What kind? Destroyers? Cruisers? Transports? Carriers? If carriers are present, we must launch immediately, Genda says. He has joined Nagumo on the bridge. We have 93 aircraft ready, armed with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs. Perfect anti-shipping configuration. But rearming has already begun, Kusaka objects. Some aircraft have no weapons at all. Others have land bombs. If we launch now, the strike will be confused, incomplete, ineffective. If we wait, the Americans might attack us first, Genda counters. We must strike now. While we have the advantage, Nagumo says nothing. He needs information. Query Plane 4. Determine if enemy force includes carriers. More silence. More waiting. More precious minutes slipping away. At Dusvan 20, the first strike force returns from Midway. Lieutenant Tomonaga's bombers and fighters orbit the carriers. Low on fuel. Some damaged. Some wounded. They need to land immediately. But the flight decks are full. The second wave aircraft are still there, still being rearmed, still blocking the landing area. We must clear the decks, Kusaka says. Move the reserve aircraft to the hangar deck. Allow the returning strike force to land. That will delay rearming even further, Gender objects. Every minute we wait gives the Americans time to prepare. To attack. Plane 4 reports enemy fleet composition. The radio operator's voice cuts through the argument. Everyone freezes. This is the critical moment. Carriers or no carriers. Attack or defend. Life or death. The radio operator continues. Quote, enemy force consists of 5 cruisers and 5 destroyers. Unquote. Nagumo exhales. Not carriers. Just cruisers and destroyers. Dangerous, but not critical. Not worth sacrificing the Midway strike. Not worth launching a half-armed, incomplete attack. Continue rearming, Nagumo orders. Priority remains Midway neutralization. Cruisers and destroyers are secondary threats. This is the second critical decision. And like the first, it seems logical, reasonable, correct. But it's wrong, catastrophically wrong. Because at 0730, 10 minutes later, Plane 4 sends another message. A message that will haunt Japanese naval history forever. Enemy force accompanied by what appears to be a carrier. Silence on the bridge. Not the silence of peace. The silence of shock, of horror, of recognition that everything has gone wrong. Carrier confirmed? Nagumo's voice is sharp, demanding. Plane 4 reports probable carrier. Uncertain. We'll investigate further. Probable. Uncertain. These words hang in the air like poison gas. Not definite, not confirmed, but possible. Likely. Threatening. Kusaka turns to Nagumo. We must decide immediately. If an American carrier is present, we are in grave danger. They can launch aircraft against us, while our decks are fouled with returning Midway strike force. We are vulnerable. Nagumo knows this. Every Japanese officer knows this. The nightmare scenario. Caught with aircraft landing. Decks blocked. Unable to launch. Unable to defend. Unable to do anything except wait and die. How long until rearming is complete? Nagumo asks. 90 minutes, Kusaka replies. But the Midway strike force must land first. They cannot remain airborne much longer. Some are critically low on fuel. And how long to land all aircraft? 30 minutes minimum, 40 minutes realistic. Nagumo does the math. 30 minutes to land, 90 minutes to rearm. That's 2 hours total. 2 hours of vulnerability. 2 hours during which American carriers could launch strikes against Kidobutai. But what choice does he have? He cannot leave his Midway strike force in the air. They will crash. Pilots will die. Aircraft will be lost. 64 planes. Irreplaceable. Begin landing operations, Nagumo orders. Immediately. Move all reserve aircraft to the hangar deck. Clear the flight decks. Recover the Midway strike force. Once they are aboard, we will rearm all aircraft for anti-shipping strike. Then we launch against the American carrier. What if the Americans attack before we can launch? Genda asks quietly. Nagumo doesn't answer, because there is no answer. If the Americans attack in the next 90 minutes, Kidobutai cannot defend itself effectively, cannot launch a counterstrike, cannot do anything except hope the combat air patrol zeros, can intercept the attackers. It is the ultimate irony. The most powerful carrier force in history, invincible for 6 months, now paralyzed by its own success, trapped by its own doctrine, vulnerable because of its own assumptions. Below, on the hangar deck, ordnance crews work frantically, reversing the rearming process, removing land bombs, reinstalling torpedoes, changing fuses, adjusting bomb sites. Chaos again, controlled but desperate. Nobody speaks. Everyone works. Sweat pours despite the ventilation. Hands move with practiced precision. But everyone knows. Everyone feels it. The sense of impending disaster. The weight of terrible decisions made under incomplete information. At 0740, the first Midway strike aircraft touches down on Akagi. A 0. Bullet holes in the wing. Pilot unhurt. The plane taxis forward. Is struck below to the hangar deck. Another lands. Another. The choreography is perfect. Practice 10,000 times. Land. Taxi. Strike below. Next aircraft. Again. But it's slow. So slow. 30 seconds per aircraft. 64 aircraft, 32 minutes total, plus delays for damaged aircraft, for wounded pilots, for malfunctioning arresting gear. Time is the enemy now, not the Americans, not their carriers, not their pilots. Time itself. Every second that passes is a second closer to disaster. Every minute that ticks away is a minute the Americans can use to prepare, to launch, to attack. At 0800, the last Midway strike aircraft lands. The flight decks are finally clear. Rearming can proceed at full speed. But precious time has been lost. Irretrievable time. Fatal time. Nagumo stands on the bridge, watching, waiting. His face shows nothing, but inside something gnaws. A feeling, an intuition. The same feeling Yamamoto expressed 2 months ago. What if we're wrong? What if intelligence failed us? What if the Americans are smarter than we think? At 0820, the Combat Air Patrol Zero pilots begin reporting contacts. Unidentified aircraft. Many aircraft. At 0820, the Combat Air Patrol Zero pilots begin reporting contacts. Unidentified aircraft. Many aircraft. Approaching from the southeast. Multiple bogies, bearing 135 degrees. Distance 40 kilometers. High altitude. Estimate 40-plus aircraft. On Akagi's bridge, this report confirms everyone's worst fear. The Americans are attacking. Now, while the Japanese carriers are at their most vulnerable. While aircraft are being rearmed. While the flight decks are still partially obstructed. While chaos reigns below. Launch all available fighters, Nagumo orders. Intercept the American strike force. 6 Zeros roar off Akagi's flight deck. 6 more from Kaga. 4 from Hiryu. 16 fighters total, against 40-plus American aircraft. The mathematics are brutal, unfavorable, desperate. But the Zeros are exceptional aircraft, and their pilots are exceptional men. They climb at 3,000 feet per minute. Nakajima Sake engines screaming, 20mm cannons loaded. They are hunting. At air 8:30 they make contact, but not with what they expected. Lieutenant Hashimoto Toshio sees them first. 15 torpedo bombers, Douglas TBD Devastators from USS Hornet, flying low, no more than 100 feet above the water. Slow, lumbering, maximum speed 115 knots. They look like pregnant whales struggling through the air. Easy targets, Hashimoto radios. All units attack. The Zeros dive. They have every advantage. Speed, altitude, position, firepower. The Devastators are obsolete aircraft. Everyone knows this. At the Battle of Coral Sea, they proved ineffective. Slow, vulnerable, death traps. Hashimoto selects his target, the lead Devastator. Squadron commander, probably. He dives from 6,000 feet, accelerates to 300 knots. The Devastator grows larger in his gun sight. The pilot doesn't take evasive action, cannot take evasive action. The Devastator is too slow, too heavy, too burdened with its torpedo. Hashimoto opens fire at 400 meters. 20mm cannon shells and 7mm machine gun bullets converge on the Devastator. The American bomber's wing shreds. Metal tears. Fabric rips. The aircraft rolls left. Dives. Impacts the water. Explodes. One down. Hashimoto pulls up. Rolls. Selects another target. Another Devastator. Same attack. Same result. The American plane disintegrates under cannon fire. Plunges into the Pacific. 2 down. Across the sky the massacre continues. Zeros swarm the Devastators like wolves attacking sheep. The American torpedo bombers have no chance. No speed, no altitude, no maneuverability. They die one after another. 3, 4, 5, 6. Some launch their torpedoes before dying. The torpedoes are Mark 13s, notoriously unreliable. Many run too deep. Many run in circles. Many fail to explode on impact. The few that run true are easily avoided by the Japanese. Carriers. The ships turn hard, present their sterns. The torpedoes slide past harmlessly. By 0845, all 15 Devastators are destroyed. 15 aircraft, 30 pilots and gunners, 30 men who attacked with impossible courage against impossible odds. 30 men who died for nothing. Hashimoto orbits at 2,000 feet, scanning for more targets. His Zero is undamaged. His ammunition expenditure 60 cannon shells, 200 machine gun bullets. Minimal. That was pathetic, he radios to his wingman. American pilots have no skill. American aircraft have no capability. This is not war. This is execution. But Petty Officer Shiga doesn't respond. He's looking southwest, at another formation approaching. More devastators, 14 of them. USS Enterprise's Torpedo Squadron 6. More targets, Shiga says. Same attack pattern. The Zeros rearm mentally. Recalculate ammunition remaining. Prepare for another slaughter. And it is a slaughter. The Enterprise Devastators attack at 0850. They fly into a storm of Zero fighters and anti-aircraft. Fire. Within 5 minutes, 10 are shot down. The remaining 4 break off. Turn away. Flee. Only one makes it back to Enterprise. The others ditch in the ocean. Crew lost. On Akagi's bridge, morale soars. The Americans attacked with 29 torpedo bombers. 28 are destroyed. 28! The combat air patrol performed perfectly. The anti-aircraft batteries performed perfectly. The escorts performed perfectly. Not one torpedo hit. Not one carrier damaged. Complete defensive victory. American pilots are cowards, Captain Aoki declares. He commands Akagi. They attack without coordination, without fighter escort, without proper tactics. They sacrifice themselves uselessly. Kusaka nods. But they delay us. That is their purpose. Sacrifice squadrons to buy time for their carrier to escape. Then we must launch immediately, Genda urges, before they can withdraw beyond our range. Rearming is not complete, Kusaka counters. Only 40 aircraft are ready. The rest require another 30 minutes minimum. 40 aircraft are sufficient, Genda insists. We must strike now. Torpedo bombers approaching from the north. The lookout's voice cuts through the debate. Low altitude. Multiple aircraft. More devastators. USS Yorktown's Torpedo Squadron 3. 12 aircraft. They approach from a different angle, different direction, forcing the Zeros to reposition, forcing the carriers to turn, creating chaos. The combat air patrol Zeros are scattered now. Some are low on ammunition. Some are low on fuel. Some are damaged from flying through their own anti-aircraft. Fire. But they attack anyway. Duty. Honor. Bushido. Lieutenant Hashimoto engages his 5th target. 6th target. 7th target. His cannon ammunition is exhausted. He uses only machine guns now. It takes longer. Requires more precision. But it works. The Devastators die just like the others. By 0920, all 12 Yorktown Devastators are destroyed. 41 American torpedo bombers total. 41 aircraft gone. 82 men dead or dying. 0 hits on Japanese carriers. On Akagi's bridge, the mood is jubilant. The Americans threw everything at Kido Butai and accomplished nothing. The invincible carrier force remains invincible, untouched, undefeated, unstoppable. The Americans have no more carrier aircraft, Aoki says, confidently. 41 torpedo bombers. That represents their entire torpedo bomber strength across 3 carriers. They have expended their offensive capability. Now we can launch our strike without fear of counterattack. Nagumo nods. Status of rearming? 70% complete, Kusaka reports. We can launch 60 aircraft immediately. The remaining 30 will follow in 20 minutes. Prepare to launch, Nagumo orders. All available aircraft. Target American carriers. Below on the hangar decks. Ordnance crews make final preparations. Torpedoes secured. Bombs fused. Fuel tanks topped off. Pilots briefed. Observers ready. This is the moment. The decisive strike. The killing blow. The Americans sacrificed their torpedo bombers for nothing. They bought no time. They caused no damage. They died uselessly. Now they will pay for their foolishness. The Japanese strike force will launch. We'll find the American carriers. We'll destroy them completely. Kido Butai has survived the attack. The crisis is over. Victory is assured. This is what every officer on every Japanese ship believes. At 0920 hours, June 4th, 1942. They are wrong, catastrophically wrong. Because 15,000 feet above them, unseen, unheard, undetected, 37 American dive bombers are rolling into their attack dives, and in 5 minutes, The invincible Kido Butai will cease to exist. Chapter 4. The 5 minutes that changed everything. Around 20 hours, 15,000 feet above Kido Butai. Lieutenant Commander Clarence Wade McCluskey orbits in a wide circle. Below him clouds, above him clear sky. Around him, 36 Douglas SBD, dauntless dive bombers from USS Enterprise. He has been searching for 90 minutes. Fuel is critically low. Some aircraft are down to 20 minutes remaining. They should turn back. Return to Enterprise. Land before they run out of gas. But McCluskey sees something. A ship. A lone destroyer. Steaming at high speed. Trailing a white wake that points like an arrow toward the northeast. Japanese destroyer Arashi. She was attacking the American submarine USS Nautilus. Now she's racing to rejoin the carrier force. She doesn't know she's leading the Americans directly to her own fleet. McCluskey follows the wake, climbs to 19,000 feet, scans the horizon, and sees them. 4 aircraft carriers, arranged in a diamond formation. 2 ahead, 2 behind, approximately 1,500 meters apart. Around them, battleships, cruisers, destroyers. The most powerful naval force in the Pacific. And they are completely unprepared. The combat air patrol Zeros are at sea level, rearming, refueling, landing, chasing the last remnants of the torpedo bomber attacks. The anti-aircraft gunners are exhausted, focused low, watching for torpedo bombers, not dive bombers from 19,000 feet. And on the carrier decks, disaster is waiting. Rearmed aircraft spotted for launch. Fuel hoses still connected. Ordnance scattered. Bombs stacked. Torpedoes parked. Aviation gasoline pooled on deck. Everything perfectly positioned for maximum destruction. McCluskey doesn't know any of this. He just knows he found the carriers. And he has 36 dive bombers. And nobody is shooting at him. He keys his radio. This is McCluskey to Enterprise dive bombers. 4 carriers below. Prepare to attack. I will take the carrier on the left. Scouting 6 will take the carrier on the right. Push over at my signal. He pauses, takes a breath. This is the moment. This is what they trained for. This is why they came 5,000 miles across the Pacific. For this. For 5 minutes that will decide the war. All units, attack, attack, attack. McCluskey rolls inverted. Pulls. His dauntless drops like a stone. -4 Gs. Blood drains from his head. Vision tunnels. He fights to stay conscious. The altimeter unwinds. 18,000 feet. 16,000. 14,000. Below, the carrier Kaga grows larger. Massive. 800 feet long. 40 aircraft on a deck. Waiting to launch. Waiting to die. On Kaga's bridge, Lieutenant Commander Amagai Takahisa sees the dive bombers. His blood freezes. This is the nightmare. The scenario every carrier officer fears. Dive bombers from altitude. No warning. No time to prepare. No defense except evasion and luck. Dive bombers overhead, all guns engage. The anti-aircraft batteries slew upward. 25mm machine guns. 12 7-centimeter guns. They open fire. Traces arc into the sky. Black puffs of flak blossom at various altitudes. But it's random. Desperate. Unaimed. The dive bombers keep coming. McCluskey's Dauntless passes through 10,000 feet. He adjusts his dive angle, 65 degrees. The carrier fills his entire windscreen. He can see individual aircraft, individual crewmen. They look like ants, running, scattering, realizing they're about to die. At 2,500 feet, McCluskey releases. His 1,000-pound armor-piercing bomb drops free. The Dauntless lurches upward, suddenly lighter. McCluskey pulls hard. 6 Gs. Vision grays. He fights the stick. Levels off at 1,000 feet. Turns hard left. Looks back. His bomb misses. Splashes 20 feet ahead of Kaga's bow. So close! So damn close. But behind him, 35 more dive bombers are attacking. And they don't all miss. Lieutenant Richard Best leads bombing 6. 3 aircraft. The best dive bomber pilots in the entire U.S. Navy. He sees McCluskey's group attacking Kaga, so he shifts targets. The carrier in the center. Akagi, Nagumo's flagship. Best rolls in at 922. His section follows. 3 dauntless dive bombers. 3,000-pound bombs. falling at terminal velocity toward the most important ship. In the Japanese Navy, on Akagi's bridge, Nagumo watches the dive bombers descend. He cannot speak, cannot move, cannot even think. He has spent 40 years preparing for naval combat. He commanded battleships, cruisers, destroyer divisions. He studied at the Naval War College. He graduated top of his class. He fought at Tsushima, but nothing prepared him for this. Dive bombers appearing from nowhere. No warning, no time, no defense. Just seconds to live. Seconds to watch everything collapse. Everything end. Kusaka grabs Nagumo's arm. "Sir, we must abandon the bridge." Nagumo doesn't respond. He watches the dive bombers. Hypnotized. Paralyzed. A deer in headlights. The first bomb hits at 9:22 and 30 seconds. It strikes Akagi's flight deck amidships, penetrates the wooden deck, enters the upper hangar, detonates among the rearmed aircraft waiting to launch. The explosion is not large. 1,000 pounds. Standard ordnance. But the effect is catastrophic. The blast ignites aviation gasoline. Gasoline ignites more gasoline. Flames spread across the hangar deck at incredible speed. Within seconds, the entire hangar is burning. Aircraft explode. Bombs detonate. Torpedoes cook off. Secondary explosions. Tertiary explosions. Chain reactions of destruction. The second bomb hits 10 seconds later. Aft, near the stern. It penetrates to the lower hangar deck. Explodes among stored aircraft. More fires. More explosions. More death. The third bomb misses. Splashes alongside. Close enough to buckle hull plates. Close enough to crack seams. Water begins flooding into compartments. 3 bombs, 2 hits, 1 miss. Akagi is doomed. The fires spread uncontrollably. Damage control parties try to fight them. But there are too many fires. Too much fuel. Too many explosions. The firefighters die at their stations. Burned alive. Blown apart. Crushed under collapsing deck structures. On the bridge, Nagumo finally moves. Kusaka drags him physically. They descend ladders, run through passageways. Smoke fills the corridors. Heat radiates through the bulkheads. Men scream. Men burn. Men die everywhere. Meanwhile, Kaga suffers worse. She takes 4 direct hits, 4,000-pound bombs, all within 2 minutes. The explosions rip her apart from within. Her flight deck buckles. Her elevators blow out. Her upper hangar collapses into the lower hangar. Fire spreads from bow to stern. The ordnance on her deck bombs, torpedoes. Aviation gasoline detonates in sympathetic explosions. Each explosion triggers more explosions. The carrier shudders like a wounded animal. Internal structures fail. Longitudinal strength compromises. She begins to break apart. Captain Okada Jisaku refuses to abandon ship. He stands on the bridge even as flames approach, even as the deck beneath his feet grows hot enough to blister through his boots. He will die with his ship. Bushido. Honor. Duty. At 0925, 3 minutes after the attack began, Kaga's forward. Aviation fuel tanks explode. The blast is massive, visible from 100 miles away. A column of flame and smoke rises 10,000 feet. The forward third of the ship simply disintegrates, vaporizes, ceases to exist. The remaining 2/3 of Kaga continues steaming for another minute. Then the engineering spaces flood. Boilers explode. The ship rolls to port, capsizes, sinks. In 4 minutes, Kaga goes from the most powerful warship in the Pacific to a twisted wreck on the bottom of the ocean. 800 officers and men die with her, including Captain Okada. His body is never recovered. Simultaneously, USS Yorktown's dive bombers attack the carrier Soryu. They roll in from the opposite direction. 13 aircraft, 13,000-pound bombs. Soryu attempts to evade. She turns hard, increases speed to 30 knots. Her anti-aircraft batteries fire continuously. But it's not enough. Nothing is enough. 3 bombs hit. 1 forward, 1 amidships, 1 aft. The same pattern as Akagi. The same catastrophic result. Soryu's hangar deck erupts in flames. Aircraft explode. Ordnance detonates. Aviation gasoline ignites. Within 90 seconds, she is a floating inferno. The fires are so intense that the steel deck itself begins to melt. Aluminum aircraft components vaporize. Men die instantly from heat alone. Not burns, not smoke, just heat. The air temperature in the hangar deck exceeds 2,000 degrees. Human bodies spontaneously combust. Captain Yanagimoto Ryusaku orders abandoned ship at 0927, but he refuses to leave. He remains on the bridge, sword in hand, chanting ancient poems. He will die honorably. He will die with his ship. He will die rather than face the shame of losing his command. At 0930, Soryu's main aviation fuel tanks explode. The blast blows out her entire midsection. The ship breaks in half. Both halves sink within minutes. Captain Yanagimoto goes down with her. So do 7-on-1 officers and men. In 5 minutes, from 0922 to 0927, 3 Japanese fleet carriers are destroyed. 3 ships that took years to build, decades to crew with trained pilots and mechanics. 6 months of continuous combat operations, hundreds of missions, thousands of hours of flight time, irreplaceable experience, irreplaceable capability. Gone, all gone in 5 minutes. The 4th carrier, Hiryu, is separated from the others by 10 miles. She escapes the initial attack. Her captain, Yamaguchi Tamon, watches the other 3 carriers burn. Smoke visible across the entire horizon. He knows what this means. He knows the battle is already lost, but he will fight anyway. He will counterattack. He will die fighting, because that is what Japanese carriers do. At 0930, Hiryu launches everything she has. 18 Valdive bombers, 60 fighters, every aircraft, every pilot, the entire striking power of the last operational Japanese carrier. Their target, the American carriers. Revenge, retribution, death. Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi leads the strike. He is 27, veteran of Pearl Harbor. China, Ceylon, 40 missions. He has never been defeated, never even been seriously challenged. Today will be different. Today he will face combat against determined, prepared enemies. But he doesn't know that yet. He forms up his strike force, climbs to 12,000 feet, turns southeast, toward where the American carriers must be, toward one final chance to salvage something from this disaster. Behind him, Hiryu continues operating, launching combat air patrol, preparing a second strike wave, maintaining discipline, maintaining honor, maintaining the fight even though the fight is already lost. On Akagi, Nagumo reaches the deck. The entire ship is burning. Flames tower 200 feet above the flight deck. The heat is unbearable. Paint blisters on the island structure. Metal glows cherry red. The smell, burning fuel, burning metal, burning flesh is overwhelming. Nagumo stands motionless, watching his flagship die, watching his career end, watching the entire carefully constructed strategy of the Imperial Japanese Navy collapse. He thinks about Tsushima, the decisive battle, total victory. This was supposed to be the same. This was supposed to be Japan's greatest triumph. Instead, it is Japan's greatest disaster. Sir, we must transfer to the destroyer Nowaki, Kusaka urges. We cannot command from here. Nagumo nods slowly. They descend to the main deck. A boat is waiting. They board. The boat pulls away from Akagi. Nagumo looks back. His flagship, proud Akagi, veteran of Pearl Harbor, symbol of Japanese naval power, is dying, burning out of control, doomed. At 0935, Akagi's forward magazines explode. The blast is cataclysmic. The entire bow section lifts from the water, twists, collapses. The flight deck buckles like cardboard. The ship's back breaks, but Akagi doesn't sink. Not yet. She burns for hours, stubborn, refusing to die quickly. Japanese destroyers circle her, unable to help, unable to save her, just watching, witnessing, mourning. On destroyer Nowaki, Nagumo sits in the captain's cabin. He says nothing, does nothing. He has commanded Kido Butai for 6 months. 6 months of perfect victory. Now in 5 minutes it's over. Everything is over. Kusaka enters. Sir, Hiryu has launched a strike against the American carriers. 18 aircraft. They may achieve success. Nagumo nods, but he doesn't believe it. 18 aircraft against 3 carriers. Against alert defenders. Against American fighters that now have altitude and position. It's suicide. Brave. Honorable. But suicide. How did this happen? Nagumo asked quietly. How did they surprise us? Kusaka has no answer. None of them have answers. The Americans were supposed to be inferior. Their intelligence was supposed to be primitive. Their carriers were supposed to be in the South Pacific. Everything was supposed to be different, but it wasn't. The Americans knew. They were waiting. They achieved perfect surprise. They attacked at the perfect moment, the most vulnerable moment, when the Japanese carriers were rearming, when the decks were fouled, when the combat air patrol was low, when everything was exactly wrong. How did the Americans know? How did they find Kido Butai? How did they coordinate their attack so perfectly? These questions will haunt Japanese naval officers for years, decades, forever. Because the answers reveal a fundamental truth. The Americans were never inferior. American intelligence was never primitive. American doctrine was never obsolete. Japan built its entire strategy on false assumptions, on racist contempt for the enemy, on belief in its own invincibility, on the certainty that spirit defeats materiel. And now, in the burning wreckage of 3 fleet carriers, in the bodies of 2,000 dead sailors, in the destruction of Japan's offensive capability, those assumptions lie exposed as lethal delusions. The invincible Kido Butai is no longer invincible. It is no longer even functional. 3 carriers gone, 1 remaining, and that one is about to be destroyed too. The decisive battle has occurred, but Japan lost, decisively, completely, permanently, and there are still 7 hours of fighting left. Chapter 5, The Last Carrier. 1100 hours, USS Yorktown, 30 miles northeast of the burning Japanese carriers. Radar operator reports multiple bogies, bearing 280 degrees, distance 70 miles, altitude 12,000 feet, estimate 18 aircraft. Closing fast. On Yorktown's bridge, Captain Elliot Buckmaster orders sound general quarters. Launch all remaining fighters. Prepare for air attack. Yorktown is already damaged. She took a bomb at Coral Sea 3 weeks ago. Should still be under repair in Pearl Harbor. But American shipyard workers performed a miracle. 72 hours of repairs that should have taken 3 months. She sailed anyway. Incomplete. Patched. Barely functional, but operational. Now she's about to be attacked by the best carrier pilots in the Japanese Navy. The survivors from Hiryu. Men with nothing to lose. Men seeking revenge. 12 Wildcat fighters launched from Yorktown's deck. They climb desperately, racing to intercept the Japanese strike before it reaches the ship. But there's not enough time, not enough altitude. The geometry is wrong. At 11:30, Lieutenant Kobayashi's Val dive bombers reach Yorktown. The combat air patrol Wildcats intercept, shoot down 3 Vals, damage 4 more. But can't stop them all. Can't stop the determined ones. The ones willing to die to complete their mission. Kobayashi selects Yorktown as his target, the only American carrier visible. He rolls into his dive from 14,000 feet. Anti-aircraft fire fills the sky. 5-inch shells burst around him. Black puffs. Close, too close. His wingman explodes, disintegrates. Gone, Kobayashi continues. Steady, disciplined, professional. At 2,000 feet he releases. His 250-kilogram bomb drops free. The Val pulls up, struggling. Damaged from anti-aircraft fire, smoke trailing. But Kobayashi doesn't see his bomb hit. He's fighting to stay airborne, to escape, to survive. His bomb penetrates Yorktown's flight deck, explodes inside, starts fires, kills dozens, but doesn't doom the ship. American damage control is superb, practiced, efficient. Within minutes, the fires are under control. Within an hour, Yorktown is operating again, launching aircraft, landing aircraft, still fighting. But Hiryu isn't done. At 13:30, she launches a second strike. 10K torpedo bombers, 60 fighters. The last operational aircraft from the last operational Japanese carrier. They fly toward Yorktown knowing they probably won't return, knowing Hiryu might not even exist when they get back. But flying anyway, because duty demands it, because honor demands it, because Bushido demands it. At 14:20, they attack. 2 torpedoes hit Yorktown. Port side. Below the waterline, the explosions rupture fuel tanks. Flood boiler rooms? Knockout power. The carrier lists heavily. 14 degrees. Looks like she's capsizing. Buckmaster orders abandon ship. But Yorktown doesn't sink. She's tough. Stubborn. American engineering at its finest. Damage control teams return. Pump water. Shore up bulkheads. Restore power. Fight to save their ship. Meanwhile, American dive bombers find Hiryu, 24 Dauntlesses from Enterprise. They attack at 1700. 4 bombs hit. The same catastrophic pattern. The same uncontrollable fires. The same secondary explosions. Hiryu burns throughout the night. Captain Yamaguchi refuses to abandon ship. Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi, Hiryu's division commander, also refuses. Both men will die with their carrier. Both men will choose honor over survival. At 02:30 on June 5th, Hiryu sinks. She takes Captain Kaku Tomeo, Admiral Yamaguchi, and 389 officers and men with her. All 4 Japanese fleet carriers are now destroyed. Akagi, Kagam, Soryu, Hiryu. Years of construction, billions of yen, thousands of trained personnel, 6 months of unbroken victory. All gone, all destroyed, all sunk to the bottom of the Pacific in less than 24 hours. The Battle of Midway is over. Japan lost. America won. The entire trajectory of the Pacific War changed in one day. But the Japanese don't fully understand this yet. Not completely, not in their souls. Chapter 6. The Long Retreat. June 5th, 1942. 400 hours. Flagship Yamato, 400 miles west of Midway. Admiral Yamamoto receives the final reports. All 4 carriers lost. Approximately 3,000 men dead. 248 aircraft destroyed. 121 pilots killed. The finest naval aviators in the world. Irreplaceable. Gone forever. Yamamoto sits alone in his cabin. He knew this was possible. He warned them. He told them intelligence could be wrong. He told them the Americans might surprise them. He told them victory was not guaranteed. But they didn't listen. They believed in invincibility. They believed in racial superiority. They believed in destiny. Now they know better. Now they understand. The Americans are not inferior. They are competent, determined, and lethal. They broke Japanese naval codes. They predicted the attack. They positioned their carriers perfectly. They achieved surprise against the force that made surprise. Its doctrine. The irony is crushing. Japan based its entire strategy on surprise attacks. Pearl Harbor, Clarkfield, Darwin, Colombo. Always attacking without warning. Always achieving surprise. Always destroying the enemy before he could react. At Midway, the Americans did exactly the same thing to Japan. Perfect surprise. Perfect timing. Perfect execution. The student became the master. The hunted became the hunter. Yamamoto drafts orders. The Midway operation is cancelled. All forces will withdraw. The invasion fleet will turn around. The battle is lost. But more than the battle is lost. Japan's offensive capability is gone. Without fleet carriers, Japan cannot project power across the Pacific, cannot attack American bases, cannot support island garrisons, cannot threaten Australia, cannot do anything except defend, passively, desperately, hopelessly. And America's industrial capacity is just beginning. New carriers are under construction. New aircraft are in production. New pilots are in training. In 6 months, America will have more carriers than Japan. In 12 months, twice as many. In 18 months, 5 times as many. Japan cannot win a war of production. Yamamoto knows this. He studied at Harvard. He served as naval attaché in Washington. He understands American industrial capability. He warned the Japanese government before Pearl Harbor, "I can run wild for 6 months. After that, I guarantee nothing." It has been exactly 6 months. December 7th to June 4th. And now the wild running is over. Now comes the slow, grinding, inevitable defeat. Yamamoto picks up his pen, writes in his diary, "The victory at Midway has dealt Japan a blow from which she will never recover. We have lost the initiative, lost our advantage, lost our opportunity. From now on, we can only react, only defend, only retreat. The war is not over, but the outcome is no longer in doubt." He closes the diary, walks to the window, watches the dawn light spread across the Pacific. Somewhere to the east, 400 miles away, 4 Japanese carriers lie on the bottom of the ocean. Broken, twisted, destroyed. Tombs for 2,000 men who believed they were invincible. They learned otherwise. In 5 minutes of terror and fire, they learned that courage is not enough, that training is not enough, that even the finest pilots and the finest aircraft can be destroyed by a determined enemy with good intelligence and good tactics. This is the lesson of Midway, the lesson Japan learned too late. The lesson written in blood and steel on the floor of the Pacific Ocean. Chapter 7, The Survivors. June 5th, 1942, 1200 hours, Pacific Ocean, 200 miles northwest of Midway. Lieutenant Hashimoto Toshio floats in the ocean. His Zero ran out of fuel 4 hours ago. He glided as far as possible. Ditched cleanly. The aircraft sank in 30 seconds. Now he sits in his life raft. Alone, watching the horizon. He is alive because he was in the air during the American dive bomber attack. He was chasing devastators, shooting down torpedo bombers, winning individual dogfights while losing the battle. When he returned to Kido Butai, all 4 carriers were burning. He had nowhere to land, so he flew west until his fuel ran out. Then he ditched. Now he waits. He thinks about what happened, replays it mentally, tries to understand. How did the Americans achieve surprise? How did they know where to look? How did they coordinate their attack? The torpedo bombers were decoys. He understands that now. 41 devastators sacrificed deliberately, drawing down the combat air patrol, forcing the Zeros to low altitude, exhausting their ammunition, creating the perfect opening for the dive bombers. It was brilliant tactics, brutal, ruthless, effective. The Americans sacrificed 100 men to kill 2,000. They traded 41 obsolete aircraft for 4 fleet carriers. The mathematics are staggering. 1 devastator for 1/10 of a fleet carrier, an exchange rate that would bankrupt any navy. Except the Americans can afford it. They have industrial capacity, pilot training programs, resources. Japan cannot afford such tactics. Japan cannot sacrifice 41 aircraft to sink 4 carriers because Japan doesn't have 41 replacement aircraft, doesn't have replacement pilots, doesn't have replacement carriers. This is what Hashimoto realizes floating in the Pacific. This is the truth that comes with survival. Japan was winning individual battles while losing the war, achieving tactical victories while suffering strategic defeat. At 1400, a Japanese destroyer finds him, hauls him aboard. He is one of the lucky ones. 60 other pilots died in the ocean, ran out of fuel, ditched, drowned, or died from wounds sustained in combat. 60 veteran pilots, irreplaceable experience. Gone. On the destroyer, Hashimoto meets other survivors. Pilots from Akagi, Kagam, Soryu, Hiryu. They compare stories, piece together what happened, try to understand the magnitude of the disaster. Someone asks, will we get new carriers? Another pilot, a veteran, 30 missions, laughs bitterly. New carriers? Japan takes 4 years to build a fleet carrier. We lost 4 carriers in 5 minutes. Even if construction started today, they wouldn't be operational until 1946. The war will be over by then. We will be defending Tokyo. The statement hangs in the air. Nobody contradicts it, because everyone knows it's true. Lieutenant Chihaya sits in the corner. His face is burned, 2nd degree, from when Akagi's hangar deck exploded. He was there, rearming his Val. The bomb hit 30 meters away. The blast wave threw him against a bulkhead. His clothes caught fire. Someone extinguished him, dragged him topside, threw him overboard. A destroyer picked him up. He survived. But his observer, Petty Officer Matsuda, didn't. Matsuda was still in the aircraft when the bomb hit, vaporized, completely. Nothing left to bury, nothing left to send home to his family. We were betrayed, Chihaya says quietly. Someone told the Americans we were coming. Someone gave them our plans. How else could they position their carriers exactly where they needed to be? Several pilots nod. This theory is comforting. Better to believe in betrayal than in American competence. Better to blame traitors than to accept that the enemy outthought them, outplanned them, outfought them. But Hashimoto shakes his head. No betrayal. They broke our codes, read our radio transmissions, knew everything, where we would attack, when we would attack, how many carriers, what route we would take. They knew it all. Impossible, someone says. Our codes are unbreakable. The cryptographers were wrong. Hashimoto's voice is flat. Final. The Americans are not inferior. Their intelligence is not primitive. We underestimated them. We paid the price. Silence. Nobody wants to accept this. Because if Hashimoto is right, if the Americans broke Japanese codes, then every operation is compromised. Every plan is known. Every movement is tracked. Japan has no secrets, no surprises, no advantages. The destroyer steams west, away from Midway, away from the burning carriers, away from the battle. The retreat has begun, and it will continue for 3 years, island by island, defeat by defeat, death by death, until American bombers incinerate Japanese cities, until atomic weapons obliterate Hiroshima and Nagasaki, until the Emperor speaks on radio for the first time in history and orders surrender. But the survivors don't know this yet. Not completely. They still hope. They still believe. They still think Japan can recover, can rebuild, can win somehow. They are wrong. But they won't accept that truth for years. Some never will. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. June 10th, 1942. Imperial Japanese Navy Headquarters, Tokyo. The conference room is silent. 20 officers sit around the table. The same men who approved the Midway operation 2 months ago. Now they face the consequences. Yamamoto sits at the head of the table. His face shows nothing, but his eyes, those eyes that saw Tsushima, that witnessed the birth of modern Japanese naval power, show something like despair. The official casualty report, Admiral Nagano, Chief of Naval Staff, reads from a document. Carriers Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, total loss. Heavy cruiser Mikuma, sunk by air attack June 6th. Heavy cruiser Mogami, heavily damaged, currently under tow. Destroyer Arashi, minor damage. Personnel losses 3,057 killed. 37 wounded. Aircraft losses 248 destroyed. Pilot losses 121 killed, including some of our finest aviators. He sets down the paper. American losses, carrier Yorktown, sunk by submarine June 7th. Destroyer Hammond, sunk simultaneously. Approximately 150 aircraft destroyed. Total American personnel killed approximately 300. The mathematics are brutal. Japan lost 4 carriers. America lost 1. Japan lost 3,000 men. America lost 300. Japan lost 248 aircraft. America lost 150. A 10-to-1 exchange ratio. In Japan's disfavor. How did this happen? Admiral Shimada demands. How did the Americans achieve complete surprise against Kido Butai? Against the finest carrier force in the world? Captain Kuroshima, the brilliant strategic planner who designed the Midway operation, speaks carefully. Analysis suggests American cryptanalysis may have compromised our naval codes. They may have intercepted our communications, deduced our plans, positioned their carriers accordingly. May have. Shimada's voice is sharp. Or did. Evidence is circumstantial but compelling, Kuroshima admits. The Americans were waiting in exactly the right position. Their carriers were positioned northeast of Midway, the optimal location to intercept Kido Butai. This suggests advanced knowledge. Then our codes must be changed immediately, Nagano says. We are implementing new codes as of today, Kuroshima confirms. But damage is done. The Americans knew our Midway plans. They may know other operational plans as well. We must assume all previous communications were compromised. Yamamoto speaks for the first time. The code security failure is serious, but it's not the only reason we lost. We lost because we made fundamental strategic errors. The room tenses. Criticizing the plan is dangerous, especially when that plan was approved by everyone present. But Yamamoto continues. We divided our forces. The Aleutian operation split our strength. We attacked Midway with 4 carriers when we had 7 available. We left 3 carriers, Zukaku, Shokaku, Yudyo, in Japanese waters or on other assignments. If all 7 carriers had participated, We might have overwhelmed the Americans, even if they knew we were coming. He pauses. We also assumed American incompetence. We believed their intelligence was primitive, their pilots inadequate, their doctrine obsolete. These assumptions were lethal. The Americans fought brilliantly at Midway. Their torpedo bomber crews sacrificed themselves to create openings for their dive bombers. Their dive bomber pilots attacked with precision and courage. Their fighters defended their carriers effectively. In every phase, American performance was professional, competent, lethal. Another pause. Longer. Heavier. Most critically, we assumed we were invincible. 6 months of victory created dangerous overconfidence. We stopped questioning our plans, stopped preparing for contingencies, stopped respecting the enemy. At Midway, we paid the price for that arrogance. Admiral Kondo stands. He commanded the Midway invasion force, the troops that never landed, the occupation that never happened. What do we do now? How do we recover from this defeat? We don't, Yamamoto says simply. There is no recovery. We have lost 4 fleet carriers. Japan's industrial capacity cannot replace them quickly. Perhaps by 1944, we will have new carriers operational. But by then, America will have built 20, 30, 40. We cannot win a production race against American industry. Then what do you propose? Kondo demands. Surrender. I propose reality, Yamamoto says. The offensive phase of this war is over. We can no longer attack. We can only defend. We must consolidate our perimeter, fortify our island bases, prepare for American counteroffensives. And we must do this knowing we will probably lose. Slowly, gradually, but inevitably. The room erupts. Officers shouting, arguing, denying. This is unacceptable. Japan cannot lose. The emperor cannot lose. The divine nation cannot be defeated by materialistic Americans. But Yamamoto sits quietly. He knows he's right. He's seen American factories, American resources, American determination. He knows what's coming. 3 years of grinding warfare, island campaigns, kamikazes, civilians burned by firebombs, cities destroyed by atomic weapons, unconditional surrender. He knows. But he cannot say it. Not openly. Not in this room. Not to these men who still believe in victory, who still believe in invincibility, who still believe in destiny. So he says nothing more. The meeting ends. The officers file out. The war continues, but everything has changed. Japan is no longer attacking. Japan is now defending, and defense does not win wars. Defense only delays defeat. Chapter 9. The Aftermath in Flesh and Memory. July 1942. 1 month after the battle. Yokosuka Naval Hospital. Commander Fuchida lies in a hospital bed. His appendicitis has healed, but something else is broken. Something the doctors cannot treat. Something that has no medical name. He survived the battle. Transferred from a Kagi to a destroyer before the carrier sank. But he watched it happen. Watched his ship burn. Watched his squadron die. Watched the invincible Kido Butai destroyed in minutes. Now he cannot sleep. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the dive bombers, falling from the sun. Perfect. Unstoppable. Delivering destruction with mechanical precision. He hears the explosions, feels the heat, smells the burning flesh. The doctors call it exhaustion, battle fatigue. They prescribe rest, but rest doesn't help, because the problem isn't physical, it's existential. For 6 months, Fuchida believed he was part of something invincible, something ordained by destiny, something that could not fail. At Pearl Harbor, he led the attack that shocked the world. Everything worked perfectly. Total surprise, devastating execution, complete victory. At Midway, everything failed. No surprise, poor execution. Total defeat. What changed? Not Japanese training, not Japanese courage, not Japanese equipment. The pilots who fought at Midway were the same pilots who fought at Pearl Harbor. The aircraft were the same. The tactics were the same. The only thing that changed was the enemy. At Pearl Harbor, the Americans were unprepared, surprised, confused. At Midway, they were ready, informed, coordinated. This is what haunts Fuchida. Not that Japan lost, but that America won. that the enemy he was taught to despise as inferior proved superior when given equal circumstances, that American pilots, supposedly soft, undisciplined, individualistic, fought with courage and skill equal to the finest Japanese aviators. A nurse enters, checks his vital signs, adjusts his pillow. She is young, perhaps 20. She smiles professionally. "Commander Fuchida, you have a visitor." Commander Genda enters. He survived the battle as well, commanded Akagi's air operations until the carrier was abandoned. Now he's assigned to naval staff in Tokyo, planning defense, preparing for the American counteroffensive that everyone knows is coming. "Fuchida," Genda sits beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Alive." Fuchida's voice is hollow, unlike 3,000 others. Genda nods. "I've been analyzing the battle, trying to understand what went wrong. I have some conclusions." "Tell me." Fuchida needs to understand, needs to make sense of the disaster, needs to find meaning in the death. "First, our intelligence failed catastrophically," Genda says. "The Americans knew we were coming. They positioned their carriers perfectly. This suggests either cryptanalysis or human intelligence. Probably both. We underestimated American intelligence capabilities. Second, our doctrine failed. We planned to attack Midway and American carriers, simultaneously if necessary, but we didn't properly prepare for that scenario. Rearming from land bombs to anti-ship weapons took too long, left us vulnerable. We needed faster ordnance handling procedures, or we needed separate strike forces, one for Midway, one for carriers. We tried to do everything with the same aircraft. It failed. Third, we suffered from confirmation bias. We believed what we wanted to believe, that American carriers were in the South Pacific. That surprise belonged to us, that our victory was inevitable. We ignored warning signs, dismissed contrary evidence, assumed the best-case scenario. This is deadly in warfare. Fuchida listens. Everything Genda says is accurate, true, valuable, but it doesn't address the fundamental question. "Genda," Fuchida says quietly, "why did we believe the Americans were inferior? What made us so certain?" Genda pauses. This is the uncomfortable question, the racist question, the question that exposes the rot at the heart of Japanese naval doctrine. "We believed they were soft," Genda admits, "materialistic, individualistic, lacking in Bushido spirit. We believed Japanese racial superiority and warrior culture would overcome American industrial capacity. We were wrong. The American torpedo bomber crews proved that," Fuchida says. 41 aircraft attacked, 41 were destroyed, 82 men died. They achieved nothing tactically, but strategically, they created the opening for the dive bombers. They sacrificed themselves deliberately, knowingly. That's not soft. That's not individualistic. That's the same spirit we claim as uniquely Japanese. "Yes." Genda's voice is barely audible. "The Americans have Bushido too. They just call it something else. Duty, honor, sacrifice. But it's the same thing. We were fools not to recognize it. Silence, long and heavy. The kind of silence that comes when comfortable lies are stripped away and uncomfortable truths remain. Can we win this war?" Fuchida asks finally. "No." Genda doesn't hesitate. "We lost the war at Midway. Everything from now on is just postponing the inevitable. America's industrial advantage is too great. The resource base is too vast. Their population is too large. We can fight brilliantly. We can die honorably. But we cannot win. Then why continue fighting? Because we have no choice. Surrender is unthinkable. The emperor cannot surrender. The Japanese people cannot accept defeat. So we fight. We die. We lose slowly instead of quickly. It's futile, but it's necessary. For honor, for face, for reasons that make no logical sense, but make perfect cultural sense." Fuchida closes his eyes. He understands. This is the tragedy of Midway, not just the military defeat. The psychological defeat, the destruction of the myth of Japanese invincibility, the revelation that everything they believed about themselves and their enemy was wrong. Japan will fight for 3 more years. Millions will die, cities will burn, civilians will starve, kamikazes will crash into American ships. Soldiers will charge machine guns with bamboo spears. The homeland will be invaded by fire from the sky. And in the end, Japan will surrender. Unconditionally, completely, utterly. All of this was determined at Midway. In 5 minutes, when dive bombers from an inferior enemy destroyed the invincible Kido Butai. When reality destroyed illusion. When pride met competence and lost. Chapter 10, The Battle That Never Ends. August 15th, 1945, 3 years after Midway, Tokyo. The Emperor speaks on radio for the first time in Japanese. History. His voice is thin, high-pitched.
Formal!
He uses ancient court Japanese that most citizens cannot understand fully, but the meaning is clear enough. Japan surrenders, unconditionally. The war is over. The divine nation has been defeated. In a small apartment in Tokyo, one of the few buildings still, standing after months of American firebombing, former Lieutenant Hashimoto Toshio listens. He survived the war, shot down 13 American aircraft, wounded twice, crashed 4 times, but survived. He is now 38 years old. He looks 60, gray hair, hollow eyes, malnourished. Like every Japanese who lived through the final year of the war, he thinks about Midway. 3 years ago, a lifetime ago, when Japan still believed it could win, when the Imperial Navy still had carriers, when victory seemed possible, everything changed at Midway. Not immediately, not obviously, but fundamentally. Japan's offensive capability died there. From June 1942 onward, Japan never again advanced, never again attacked, never again threatened American territory. Instead, America advanced. Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. Island by island, battle by battle, death by death, moving inexorably toward Japan itself. Toward this moment, this broadcast, this surrender. Hashimoto remembers floating in the Pacific after Midway, rescued by a destroyer, believing Japan could recover, believing new carriers would be built, believing victory was still possible. He was wrong about everything. Japan built new carriers, but not enough, not fast enough. And by the time they were operational, there were no experienced pilots to fly from them. The veterans, the men who attacked Pearl Harbor, who bombed Darwin, who fought at Ceylon, died at Midway, at Guadalcanal, at Rabaul, in 1,000 nameless skirmishes across the Pacific. The replacements were boys, teenagers, given 6 months of training instead of 3 years, flying obsolete aircraft against numerically superior enemies. They died quickly, uselessly, achieving nothing except postponing the inevitable. In the final year of the war, Japan resorted to kamikazes, suicide attacks, young men deliberately crashing their aircraft into American ships, the ultimate expression of Bushido, the ultimate admission of desperation. Hashimoto refused to fly kamikaze missions, not from cowardice, from pragmatism. Crashing into an enemy ship doesn't win wars. Destroying enemy aircraft wins wars. But nobody listened to him. By 1945, logic no longer mattered. Only sacrifice mattered. Only dying beautifully mattered. The Emperor finishes speaking. The broadcast ends. Silence. Throughout Japan, 20 million people sit in shock. The unthinkable has occurred. The divine nation has been defeated. The sacred homeland has surrendered. Some civilians commit suicide, unable to accept the shame, unable to imagine life under occupation, unable to process the magnitude of the defeat, but most simply endure. They survived firebombing. They survived starvation. They survived atomic weapons. They will survive surrender. They will survive occupation. They will survive rebuilding, because survival is what humans do, even when honor demands death, even when culture demands suicide, even when pride demands defiance. Hashimoto walks to his window, looks at Tokyo, or what remains of Tokyo. Entire neighborhoods gone, burned to ash, hundreds of thousands dead. The city looks like a vision of hell. And this is victory for America. This is what happened to the nation that attacked Pearl Harbor, that conquered Southeast Asia, that believed itself invincible. He thinks about that morning in June 1942, sitting in the briefing room on Akagi. Lieutenant Abe telling them Midway would be easy. that American fighters would be minimal, that victory was assured. Everyone believed it. Why wouldn't they? They had never lost, never even been seriously challenged. Now 3 years later, Japan has lost everything. Territory, wealth, cities, millions of lives. The war, the emperor's divinity, the national myth, all because they underestimated the enemy, all because they believed their own propaganda, all because they confused early success with inherent superiority. The Americans weren't inferior. They were unprepared at the start of the war, but they learned, adapted, improved. By Midway, they were equal to Japan's finest. By 1945, they were superior in every measurable way. This is the lesson of Midway, the lesson Japan learned too late. The lesson written in the ashes of Tokyo, in the ruins of Hiroshima, in the surrender document that will be signed on USS Missouri in 2 weeks. Pride is not enough. Spirit is not enough. Courage is not enough. Wars are won by nations that combine courage with competence, spirit with strategy, pride with pragmatism. Japan had courage and spirit and pride, but it lacked pragmatism. It lacked strategic flexibility. It lacked the ability to recognize and adapt to reality. America had all of those things, and that's why America won. Not because Americans were braver, not because American aircraft were better, not because American pilots were more skilled, but because America's system was more effective. America's strategy was more sound. America's intelligence was more accurate. The best Japanese pilots were as good as the best American pilots. But Japan had 1,000 such pilots. America trained 100,000. The best Japanese carriers were as good as the best American carriers. But Japan built 7 in 10 years. America built 24 in 4 years. Quality alone cannot overcome quantity when the quality difference is minimal. This is mathematics. Cold, brutal, inarguably. Hashimoto survived Midway, survived the war, but in some sense he died at Midway along with Kido Butai. The person who believed in Japanese invincibility died that day. The person who thought spirit could overcome materiel died that day. The person who underestimated America died that day. What remains is a shell, a survivor without illusions, a veteran without victories, a pilot without aircraft. Japan will recover. In 20 years, it will be an economic powerhouse. In 50 years, one of the richest nations on earth. But it will never again believe in its divine destiny. Never again underestimate potential enemies. Never again mistake early success for permanent superiority. These lessons were purchased at the price of 3 million Japanese lives, hundreds of thousands of Chinese, Filipino, Indonesian, Korean, American, Australian, British lives, tens of millions of casualties total. And it all began to end at Midway, in 5 minutes, when reality destroyed illusion, when American dive bombers destroyed Kido Butai, when the myth of invincibility shattered forever. Epilogue: The Shadows on the Water. June 4th, 1982, 40 years after the battle, Midway Atoll. A memorial ceremony. American veterans, Japanese veterans, standing together. Old men now, 70s, 80s, gray hair, weathered faces. Memories that won't die. Former Lieutenant Commander Clarence Wade McCluskey stands at the podium. He is 75 years old. Led the dive bomber attack that destroyed Akagi and Kaga. Retired as a Rear Admiral. Navy Cross. Distinguished Flying Cross. Living legend. 40 years ago, McCluskey says, I led 37 dive bombers against the Japanese. Carrier force. We achieved surprise. We attacked at the optimal moment. We destroyed 3 carriers in 5 minutes. History calls it the turning point of the Pacific War. We call it the greatest carrier battle ever fought. He pauses, looks at the Japanese veterans in the audience. But I want to say something that might be uncomfortable. We didn't win because we were better. We won because we had better intelligence. Because the Japanese were caught at a vulnerable moment. Because our torpedo bomber crews sacrificed themselves to create our opening. We won because of factors beyond skill and courage. The Japanese pilots at Midway were superb. Their aircraft were excellent. Their tactics were proven. If circumstances were different, if they had detected our carriers first, if their decks weren't fouled with returning aircraft, they might have destroyed us instead. The battle was closer than most people realize. It could have gone either way. He pauses again. War is not a test of virtue. It's not a contest between good and evil. It's a violent competition between nations with conflicting interests. Both sides believe they're right. Both sides fight with courage. Both sides suffer. The winners write history, but that doesn't make them morally superior, just victorious. Former Lieutenant Hashimoto Toshio listens from the audience. He is 76, one of the few surviving Zero pilots from Kido Butai. He came to Midway for closure, to make peace with ghosts. After the ceremony, he approaches McCluskey. They shake hands. Two old men who tried to kill each other 40 years ago. No, just two old men who survived. You fought well, Hashimoto says in broken English. Your torpedo bomber crews. Very brave. Samurai spirit. McCluskey nods. Your pilots fought well too. We shot down 41 torpedo bombers. But they kept attacking. Never broke off. Never ran. That took incredible courage. Courage not enough, Hashimoto says. We learned this. Intelligence, strategy, production. These win wars. Not just courage. Wisdom paid for with blood, McCluskey replies. They stand at the memorial, looking at the ocean. Somewhere below, 4 carriers lie in the darkness. Akagi, Kagam, Soryu, Hiryu, tombs for 2,000 men. And with them, Japan's dream of Pacific dominance. The myth of invincibility. The illusion of racial superiority. Also below, USS Yorktown. Sunk by submarine 2 days after the battle. Tomb for 141 American sailors. Americans who fought and died to stop Japanese expansion. Who believed they were defending freedom. Who sacrificed everything for that belief. Both sides believed they were right. Both sides fought with courage. Both sides suffered terribly, but only one side won. And the reason they won had less to do with virtue than with intelligence, strategy, industrial capacity, and ultimately luck. The battle lasted 5 minutes, but its effects lasted forever. Japan never recovered its offensive capability. America never lost the initiative. 3 years of warfare followed. Millions died. Cities burned. Atomic weapons incinerated civilians. The war ended in total Japanese defeat. All determined at Midway, by dive bombers appearing at the perfect moment, by intelligence breaking codes, by one destroyer leading the enemy to its own fleet, by small decisions with enormous consequences. Hashimoto and McCluskey stand in silence. The ocean is calm, peaceful, beautiful. No sign of the violence that occurred here 4 decades ago. No indication that thousands died here. That history changed here. That the world was remade here. But the shadows remain. On the water, in memory. In the lessons learned and prices paid. The shadow of Kido Butai, once invincible, now destroyed. The shadow of imperial ambition, once confident, now extinguished. The shadow of lives lost, futures erased, dreams shattered. War has no winners, only survivors and corpses. The survivors tell stories, the corpses become statistics. Both fade with time, but the lessons remain, carved in steel and bone at the bottom of the Pacific, written in blood across history. Never underestimate your enemy. Never believe your own propaganda. Never mistake early success for inherent superiority. Never assume victory is inevitable. These lessons cost Japan 3 million lives to learn. Cost America 400,000 lives to teach. Cost the world 60 million lives total before the war finally ended. The price of pride. The cost of illusion. The mathematics of hubris. At Midway in 5 minutes, Japan lost the war it had been winning for 6 months. Lost its carriers, lost its pilots, lost its future. Not because Japanese sailors were cowards, not because Japanese pilots lacked skill, but because they believed they were invincible. And they were wrong. America won because it respected the enemy, because it invested in intelligence, because it refused to despair after defeats, because it learned and adapted and improved, because it combined courage with competence, spirit with pragmatism, determination with flexibility. These were the deciding factors, not divine favor, Not racial superiority, not destiny. Just human qualities, competence, determination, adaptation, applied systematically and effectively. The sun sets over Midway. Red light spreads across the Pacific. The same ocean that swallowed 4 carriers. The same waters that preserved their secrets for 14 years. The same horizon that deceived Nagumo, that hid American carriers, that witnessed the death of invincibility. McCluskey and Hashimoto shake hands once more. Then part. They will never meet again. McCluskey dies in 2011. Hashimoto in 2016. The last generation that fought at Midway. The last witnesses to the 5 minutes that changed everything. But the battle never truly ends. It lives in history, in memory, in lessons learned and prices paid, in the hulks of 4 carriers lying 17,000 feet below the Pacific surface, in the names carved on memorials, in the stories told to children and grandchildren. The Battle of Midway, June 4th, 1942. 5 minutes of violence, 80 years of consequences. Forever remembered, never forgotten. The invincible became vincible. The impossible became reality. The hunters became the hunted. And the sound that echoes across those 5 minutes, the sound that defines them, that explains them, that immortalizes them, is not the roar of aircraft engines, or the explosion of bombs, or the screams of dying men. It's the sound of illusions shattering, of pride collapsing, of certainty destroyed, of hubris meeting reality and breaking against it like waves, against stone. That sound, that terrible final, irreversible sound, is the sound of history turning. And once turned, it never turned back. Final narrative close. The echo. The rain falls on Tokyo. Soft, steady, washing away ash, washing away blood, washing away the physical remnants of war. But not the memory. Never the memory. In a small museum in Yokosuka, a photograph hangs. 4 carriers in formation. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. Taken in April 1942. 2 months before Midway. They look invincible. Unstoppable. Perfect. Visitors stand before the photograph. Young Japanese. Too young to remember the war. Too young to understand what was lost. They read the plaque. The dates. The names. The brief description. Lost at the Battle of Midway, June 4th, 1942. They move on. The past is the past. History is history. The present is what matters now. But in the rain, in the silence, in the spaces between words and memory, the echo remains. The echo of engines, of bombs, of screams, of crackling flames, of ships dying, of empires falling, of certainty dissolving. The echo of 5 minutes that explained everything, that taught the most expensive lesson in Japanese history, that proved courage alone is insufficient, that demonstrated the price of underestimating your enemy. The echo fades with time, but never disappears, because the lesson is eternal, universal, timeless. Pride without wisdom leads to catastrophe. Confidence without humility leads to defeat. Strength without respect for your opponent leads to destruction. Japan learned this lesson at Midway, in fire and blood and steel, in 5 minutes that cost 2,000 lives. That destroyed 4 irreplaceable carriers. That ended Japan's offensive capability. That determined the ultimate outcome of the Pacific War. The Americans taught that lesson, not through superiority, through preparation, through intelligence, through respect for their enemy's capabilities, through refusing to believe their own propaganda, through combining courage with competence. This is why America won at Midway. This is why Japan lost. Not because of divine favor or racial superiority or manifest destiny, but because one side did everything a little bit better when it mattered most. Because one side prepared for the battle they might have to fight rather than the battle they wanted to fight. The rain continues. The photograph remains. The echo fades but never dies. And somewhere, 5,000 miles across the Pacific, 4 carriers rest in eternal darkness, silent, still, forever preserving the moment when invincibility met reality, when pride met competence, when the certainty of victory met the actuality of defeat. The Battle of Midway, 5 minutes that changed history. 80 years of echoes, forever remembered as the day the rising sun began its long descent into darkness.